All right, it's January 2nd, day two, y'all. So, yesterday I said that, I didn't know quite what I was going to be doing, why I was doing, but I'm in motion. And I think that things will be revealed to me with clarity as to why I'm doing it. But here we go, and I'm in motion. So, what I didn't expect, and a good friend of mine reached out to me this morning with a possible subject to talk about and to ask for, feedback, your opinions on. And so I didn't see that coming, but I appreciate him doing that because, as I said before, I was uncomfortable with doing this, but I'm trying to be obedient this year and move in the direction that I need to be. So he suggested that we discuss or talk about and get some comments on how have you dealt with relationships for people who voted for Donald Trump. So, if you will be following me and, we know each other through other mediums, then most likely a good majority of y'all did not vote for Donald Trump. But there's been a lot of discussion as to how do you deal with those relationships? How do you navigate that? Should you maintain it? How far are you emotionally with being offended with a person who did vote for Donald Trump, and what does that mean? So this is not something that I at all would have addressed or spoke about for the first, real day that I'm actually addressing something. But a part of me actually doing this is that I told myself that for those things that would make me uncomfortable and not want to deal with, or have, you know, want to stay back from, that's the thing that I'm gonna have to do and run to it. So he he kicked this off with the something I definitely was not, thinking about addressing, but as I said, let's do it. So I am curious as to what your thoughts are and how did you navigate, those relationships during the election season, as well as afterwards, especially after he won, right? And my thoughts on it are pretty much, you know, for the other when you're dealing with those differences of political opinions, and it also goes for religion or other things. How good are you at creating those boundaries in conversation? How good are you able to navigate having loving discussions with others? And I don't know, it's a wind going. I don't even know how bad this sound is right now. Um, I'll figure that out later with whatever equipment I need to eventually get to a little sound stuff. But how well do you do with creating boundaries, respecting other people's boundaries? Do you feel compelled to force your opinion down someone else's throat until you believe that they also agree with you? And do you deal with people who do the same? I'm not a much of a debater, never have been. I love lively discussion of intelligent people that we can both give our sets of opinions on things. But I'm not necessarily trying to convince you of anything. Hear the facts, right? And I don't have too many conversations with people who feel like I have to believe what they say and agree with it wholeheartedly. I have no desire for those conversations, right? So I think when coming with these sort of political divisive um, discussions within loving relationships, and loving could be, family, friends, possibly coworkers, right? Um, Romantic relationships, you know, is really setting the boundaries of what are the important things to talk about. Now, I know that this is much more difficult because what he represents as far as ideology and a lot of the movement that supports him revolves around hatred, bigotry, misogyny, and a throwback to the years of anyone but white men, everyone else needs to be oppressed. And it's that representation that makes it a lot different than just a simple political disagreement. I think people use the word political or politics too loosely. Oftentimes, when they say you try to be politically correct, and the real thing that they are trying to, what they're missing is that no, I'm trying to show human decency. I'm trying to deal in compassion. I'm trying to deal in love. I'm trying to be respectful of something that I may say that would offend somebody simply because I just, do I care or not? And it's that taking that time to care about how your words affect others has now been described as or construed as political correctness. And I think that political correctness and policy, or when people talk about politics, they encompass it in too much, right? When we start talking about politics, I want to know about, okay, how are we going to deal with this bond issue and, financing certain things, and things take a much more moral turn than things, because when you start putting things on the table to talk about what you're going to finance and what money is going to go towards, oftentimes those can be moral issues. But when it comes to just human decency, I think that the loose word of political correctness is just used too broadly. So in that context, and having these discussions with loved ones and people that you want to maintain relationships with, how are you balancing that? All those relationships important. Why are you dealing with that person? Is this person essential to your life? Like COVID, like, is this an essential worker in your life at all? And if not, and if they irk you to that extent, then maybe they don't need to be there. Is this a person that you truly love and care for, that is important for you to maintain a longer term relationship? Then those are things to take into consideration. When you get a certain age, you know that meaningful relationships kind of ebb and flow. There can be times that you don't talk to a person for a long time, and not because you fell out necessarily, or they might be going through certain things in their life, whereas they're not their best self, they're not their best person. They have taken on views or beliefs that you don't agree with, and this is the person you cared about. Come 5-10 years later, they come back and say, man, I was wrong. I don't know what I was believing at the time. My mind wasn't quite right. And they can apologize, and hopefully they can see what they did. And you might have been that person, right? You might have been a person where you've gone through those stages that you needed to grow. So you have to ask yourself, you're disagreeing with this person now. Some of their thoughts may be pretty egregious, but what level of grace are you going to give them for self-correction? Now, that grace doesn't necessarily mean that you have to deal with them in the extent of having to deal with their personal views and listening to them, and they wanted to inundate you with information that just doesn't sit right with your soul. You have the ability and power to decide how you deal with them and what the nature of that relationship may be, because the dynamics may change. And so it's up for you to make that determination as to how this person needs to be in your life and how do they impact your mental health. Because if they're impacting your mental health to such a negative extent that it just irks you to the no end to be around them, then you have to give yourself some distance and space. And if they love you, they would also understand that. So give them some grace. Might not have to deal with them closely, but people do err. We all grow in different ways, and we all could come back and say, I don't know what I was thinking of at that time, right? And also dig down to what is it about their support for Trump was the thing that led them to support him? Was it just, fiscal, immigration, um, extreme right wing, ideology, religious, abortion? What are those things that made them vote for him? Because it may not all be across the board. They're not all in alignment with each other. Um, and if you are dealing with a person, it might be a grandparent who also helps watch your kids. Tread lightly. You need them, right? So these are determinations to be made, but protect yourself. Give grace. You've needed grace at times in your life, and do the same. But no matter what, continue to act and walk in love. Of course, first loving yourself, and protecting yourself and your mental health. But this is definitely a tough one. I really do want to know how y'all are navigating and dealing with folks that you love and care about, but went to the dark side. I don't know. Let your boy know. Thanks for walking with me on this day too. Love.